Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome. Welcome to this fifth talk on the third Karmapa's Mahamudra Prayer. In the structure of this prayer, we're in these two aspirations to have a really very special foundation for our practice in future lives. And in the last talk, then we were looking for this general conditions, free from suffering, and with all of the favourable conditions for practicing Dharma. So that's generally what we want, life after life anyway. It's what we want for everyone, for people to have all these, what are called the good qualities of existence. As long as we're going to be born, existing, then we want ourselves and others to have a long life and good health and friends and all the resources they need, and to be in a place of peace and safety and to have a good reputation and so on. These good qualities of existence. And in our particular case, these will be the general foundations that give us the opportunity to practice Dharma. And now in this next verse, we move on to an aspiration, a prayer, to have the very, very special or extraordinary conditions we will need to actually effectively practice Mahamudra in that next life. Now this verse is in one way quite a simple verse, and especially if you're familiar with Vajrayana Buddhist language, if you've done the four foundations, then you'll be able to tick off the ideas one after another and think, oh yeah, I know those. And it may be very true. But in another way, although these are very simple and familiar things, first, they are so important that we mustn't rush them. And secondly, there's more to this verse than meets the eye, and I'm very, very grateful to our present Tai Situpa for explaining in depth this verse. So I think this simple verse will probably take us 2 talks. Otherwise, in one talk, I'm going to have to rush it or make a talk that's uncomfortably long. So what is the verse? Let's see. Obtaining the freedoms and the advantages of the finest human existence, endowed with faith, diligence, and intelligence, may I rely upon good Dharma masters, receive the quintessence of their instruction, and, meeting no obstacle to their proper practice, may I make use of the sacred teachings in all my lives. This verse is jam-packed. I don't know if you like jam, but it really is full of many things. Now the first point, we are praying that in those future lives we will have the precious human existence. This topic we must really not just understand, but we must contemplate and contemplate until it's changed us. That's why we have the 4 ways of changing the mind. So in this talk, I'll assume, and I'll hope, that you have at least received and studied those teachings, but more than anything else, that you spent time with them, and that your mind has changed, so that no matter what is happening in your daily life, when you wake up in the morning, the very fact that you're alive, and that you have Dharma, and the Mahamudra transmission is coming to you, should make you so happy, thrilled. And life is life. Even Buddhas have problems. Even our great teachers have problems. Life always goes up and down out there, but deep in our hearts, when we've understood, not with our conceptual mind, but in all of our being, this precious human existence. We are just so happy to be alive each day. When we do study it, we see 18 key points, I'm sure you know. So there are 8 freedoms, 8 things we're not. There are 10 advantages, 10 assets, positive things, 5 within us, 5 in the world around us, in this life we've been born in, that make access to these teachings possible. So if we know those, then we can make those 8 plus 10, that's 18, into 21, with the 3 aspects of faith. And then we can go and add more teachings, for instance, like those we find in Words of My Perfect Teacher. Then in that case, we can get up to 42 topics of contemplation that I hope you've spent good time with in your foundation practices. And if not, I have a series of these online teachings about the 4 foundations and about precious human existence. So let's leave that one there. We're praying to have the most precious of all human existences. That means one where we have everything in place for these Mahamudra teachings. But in the 21, we have the 3 aspects of faith. So let me remind you what those 3 are. The first is logical faith, and that's where we think about the teachings and they make sense. We study them, we think about them, just as a framework, as a science telling us about karma, cause and effect, as being the main mechanism behind what we experience as life, and then the teachings on suffering and so on. So anyway, we have logical faith in the teachings. The second type of faith is the faith that comes from aspiration. So even if we haven't assimilated and enjoyed the beauty of the Buddha's explanation of things, we aspire. We are inspired by the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha and the Gurus and the lineage masters' stories. And we think, not just think, we feel in our DNA, that's what I want to be. That's really what it's all about. So we aspire to the result. And we know, because it comes in all the Buddha's teachings, if you want that result, you must practice its causes. The Dhamma, and in our case, Mahamudra practice. Then there's a third type of faith, which is really the best, and that emerges through experience, where we don't just have the conceptual belief and the aspiration, but through our own practice, we've had confirmation in our experience and realization that the Dharma is the truth. It couldn't be any other way. It's so glaringly obvious. So we are praying in our future life with the precious human existence to have a rich faith. And of course, these are not quantum qualities. It's not you either have type 1 of faith or you don't, or type 2 or type 3. They can, each of them, become stronger and stronger. So our conceptual understanding of Dharma becomes watertight. And our aspiration becomes the deepest heartfelt longing. And then through practice, we have more and more live confirmation of the meaningfulness of the teachings. We're praying for that. But here, in particular, we're praying for a coming together that is absolutely at the heart of Mahamudra. Now, this may not be comfortable for everyone, because these days a lot of people do sort of online teachings. They look at videos, they read books, they comment, and there's Mahamudra, or sometimes in our cousin lineage, the Nimapa and Dzogchen, which is kind of horizontal, peer-to-peer, teachings and help. Well, it's not for me to pass judgment on that. But in the past, it was never like that. It wasn't horizontal peer-to-peer. It is very definitely vertical. And in fact, in the teachings, once they become deeper, more intimate, more private, we don't share horizontally because everyone's different. So different that saying, this is my experience, and doesn't really work for somebody else's reality. In fact, it can bring confusion, jealousy, all sorts of difficulties. So in Mahamudra, until very recent times, what makes Mahamudra really work is the coming together of a qualified teacher, it says, the best of gurus. So it means that they need themselves to have realized Mahamudra with very great stability. They become a window into this lineage that goes all the way back to Buddha Vajradhara. But not only that, they need not only to have the realization, but to have the skill to share it with their disciples. These days, for instance, we have teachers who are very, very skilled talkers. They charm, they have many followers. But whether or not deep inside they are this transparency, this lack of ego, which is just the presence of that lineage of timeless shunyata, or not, well, it's hard to tell actually. So we need a teacher who is the real deal and who has the ability to teach each person according to their own personality, their own weaknesses. So here the term that's being used for the teacher, which is Gewishinyen in Tibetan, Kalyana Mitra in Sanskrit, it's a very beautiful term. It has two words, Shinyin, and it means like a friend and a relative in virtue. But it means someone who accepts us as we are and is able to work with what we are in terms of the way we think, the way our emotions work, the karmic history we carry, and who becomes our very, very best friend in opening up all of that can of worms inside to turn it into enlightenment. So it's friend and relative in virtue. And people translate that severally. Some people say spiritual friend. Some people say mentor. Doesn't really matter. We need to understand the meaning. That person who's realized Mahamudra, who can teach it in great kindness, will accept us as we are, as working material. So that's from that side up there. From our side, down here, we need to be a qualified disciple, which means that we need to have the precious human existence, but in particular, those three types of faith. The faith of certainty, conceptual, and aspiration, and then confidence for experience. So the qualified guru and the qualified disciple come together, but then, even if they're both qualified, what flows between them needs to work. So here we're praying for the positive qualities that will make that work, the diligence, the faith, the intelligence, and that as we, in future lives, step by step, until enlightenment, go along this journey, along this road of Mahamudra, that there will be no serious obstacles. So we need to know also, what does obstacle mean? I did touch on it last time about how for the bodhisattva, obstacles don't mean problems coming from the outside. They mean that we don't apply the wisdom and the remedies that we know about. The obstacles come from within, where we don't face aggression or sickness or poverty in the bodhisattva way. There will always be problems from the outside. So these are some of the things this verse is praying for. And classically in the Mahamudra teachings, one needs to know that there are some things we do that all Buddhists do. The 4 thoughts that change the mind, the 4 special foundations of prostrations and refuge, Buddhist citta development, purification, Vajrasattva practice, mandala offering. These are common Buddhist practices, but once we get to Guru Yoga, and then what is called the actual practice of Mahamudra, not the foundations, but the actual practice, then those qualities of interaction, diligence and wisdom are very, very important. Let's consider, and not just important, diligence and wisdom and faith. They're each important, but then they need to be in synergy with each other. Our faith needs to be wise faith, and our diligence needs to be wise diligence. And then our wisdom needs not just to sit on its laurels with what we've understood, either through studies or through our meditation experience, and think that's good enough. Wisdom is never ending until you are Buddha. So we need to be very, very diligent in developing the wisdom and in developing the faith. And then that diligence and that wisdom needs to be all there because we have such heartfelt devotion and faith in what we're doing and in the process. Let's, in this talk, let's consider diligence. The paramita, or the perfection of diligence, puts its finger on the real meaning, because I think many of us, when we hear this word diligence, we think hard work. And in fact, in his teachings in the USA, the present Tai Situpa said, you could be banging your head against a wall, trying to make a hole in the wall, and you could be very diligent in the worldly sense of the word. Day after day, and maybe after some time you'd make a dent in the wall, and your poor head would be not very good on account of that. So that's not wise diligence. Wise diligence is that you go and get a chisel and a hammer, and a big, heavy hammer and a sharp chisel, and maybe you can do boom in one blow what might have taken you days banging your head. So this word diligence is not about lots and lots and lots and lots of effort. It's about efficiency. In fact, if it wasn't such a uncomfortable word because of businessmen and that kind of thing, it'd be a very good translation. Using our mind efficiently, making the best of our precious human time. And also it has a meaning, and the heart meaning of joy, because diligence in the Latin root is the same root as our word delight. And what Karmapa explains, and many of our lineage teachers explains, is when you enjoy something, you can't get enough of it. And you want to do it so beautifully, so perfectly. And on the contrary, when you're not enjoying something, it just exhausts you. And even a little bit, you get fed up, you go off for a cup of tea or coffee, you come back to it. So if we want to practice our meditation and our study and the things we'll see in the coming verses efficiently, we need to learn how to really love and enjoy the Dharma, and in particular, love and enjoy every moment of opportunity to practice Mahamudra, and normally that means meditation. Meditation. So we learn to delight, to give ourselves the enthusiasm, but then at the same time to be efficient. So for instance, in the foundation practices where you do 100,000 prostrations, it's not just a question of all that hard work. It's a question of making the prostration work. And what does that? It's when, as you say the prayer, what the prayer means is coming from the heart, and you mean it every time. Each prostration is a perfect moment of taking refuge in the 6 refuges, and you really mean it, and you become so humble and so receptive. And then your visualization is clear, and not only is it clear, but when we visualize 3 qualities, clarity, purity and confidence, you really feel the refuges are there, and you know the lives of each of those masters and meanings and symbols that you're taking refuge in. So then, even, and this happens sometimes, one prostration is perfect, and it brings such blessing and meaning and connection, and you actually feel the refuge, the protection, the support, the guidance, the inspiration. So we need to learn with all of our practice. The Vajrasattva, it's very important to learn to be one-pointed and so on. We need to be efficient. So we are praying that in the next life and in that precious human existence where we are filled with the 3 types of faith, then we will be diligent. We won't waste our time. We won't waste our time through laziness. We won't waste our time through inefficiency. And we won't waste our time by low self-esteem. We'll have the confidence and be fired up with joy for our Mahamudra practice. So today, let's leave this verse here and come back to it in the next talk and fill in the gaps and include some of the brilliant teachings of our present Tai Situpa. I wish you so well with your practice and look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon. Thank you for listening.